Welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast, where we're helping people improve their quality of life through nutrition and fitness. And now, your hosts, nutrition and wellness coaches, international speakers, Adam and Shoshana Chain.
Hey, I'm Adam Chain.
And I'm Shoshana Chain, and we are Propelled by Plants.
Today we bring to you episode 217, What the Health and Navigating Information with Tom Barbieri.
In today's episode of the Plant Trainers Podcast, we talk to Tom Barbieri about what's actually going on with our health. Society, behavior, research, and documentaries have such an extreme effect on our overall health, and yet we're still facing a huge epidemic. So we sit down and we talk about what we need to do and what we need to be doing about it. Health is not a one-size-fits-all, and the more we talk about it and understand that, the better we'll be able to motivate and move in the right direction.
As a husband, dad, wellness consultant, personal trainer, USOC certified sport and strength coach, and rational health activist, Tom Barbieri dedicates his passion and education towards helping individuals find their own path to health, fitness, and overall wellness. With a primary focus on behavior and habit change, Tom works with individuals local to his home in Northern Virginia and also works with individuals in small groups in a virtual format. When Tom's not working directly with his clients, he loves to run, he loves to hike, he definitely loves watching his boys play ice hockey, and he works with other motivated advocates in the health and wellness field to effectively communicate the importance of individuality in health and wellness, living by the common mantra, progress over perfection.
Today we want to encourage you to be an advocate and help others. We know how many of you are actually enjoying the show because you're making changes in your life and you're getting inspiration and you're getting information. And the reason we know this is because we're getting emails and Facebook messages from so many of you. Our clients were listeners before contacting us, and they wanted help improving their quality of life through nutrition and fitness so that they could start training for life.
Yeah, hashtag training for life.
Hashtag
That's what I've been
life.
adding. So anyway, here are 2 ways that you can help others with their personal journeys. And number 1 is to just share this podcast with 2 people, 2 friends, family, colleagues, who you think would be interested or could benefit from the Plant Trainers podcast. So when you're done doing that, the second thing you could do, if you have the time, of course, is to give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. This helps others know how much you love our show, and it also plays around with the algorithms that makes the show pop up for new listeners. We'd love for you to feel good about sharing important information with other people, and we really would love for you to take the time to help us out in that way. And now for a moment of gratitude.
Today, I'm grateful for risk-taking, for stepping outside the box. I had spent the weekend in LA. I flew down alone. Adam didn't come with me to this conference. I flew down alone. I went to my hotel. I went out for dinner. I met with amazing people. I spoke on a stage and inspired people, hopefully. But really the biggest thing that I learned was that when I step outside my comfort zone and travel alone, when that's not something that's very comfortable for me, there are so many amazing experiences that I could gain from that. And I'm stronger for that and can do it again in a week after I rest. But the idea is step outside your comfort zone, get outside that box, and allow yourself to learn.
I'm grateful for the fact that you do so much in this house. And to all those single parents out there, I don't know how you do it, because while you were away in LA this weekend, I was alone with the kids and there was so much laundry to do, so many dishes to do, running the kids around to their programs all by myself, and just wow. So I'm just grateful that you do all the things that you do.
Tom Barbieri, welcome back to the Plant Trainers Podcast.
Thanks, guys. It's great to be here.
We're very excited. We haven't seen you or talked to you in this format since episode 22, when you shared a moment of gratitude with us. Do you have another moment of gratitude that you'd like to share today?
I do. it seems like 22 years since we've connected again. This is great. I do. And I was thinking about this today because I knew as an avid listener of your podcast, I knew you were going to ask this. And it really comes back around to something similar to I visit all the time, is that it's really great to be able to connect with so many different people all over the world, online and also locally, to help people with some of their health needs and wellness needs. And what's even better about that is, and the diversity of people that we're exposed to be able to understand that there are so many different needs and circumstances out there, you really begin to appreciate what people are going through and what people need. And just to have that diversity in our industry is really great. And it's really helped me as a coach understand and help people better. So, that's what I'm really grateful for, is just being able to get exposed and communicate and connect with so many different people.
I think it's great that you're doing what you're doing, and we really appreciate the fact that you listen to our show. And it has been around 200 episodes ago, which blows my mind when I think about how far we've come in doing this. And thank you for hanging out with us and listening. And for anyone who's listening now who hasn't listened to episode 22 or hasn't gone all the way back, we're definitely going to link back to that in our show notes. And you mentioned in your gratitude moment about the diversity of people and the needs that people have. And I think that's going to fit in pretty nicely to what we wanted to talk about tonight. And since the last episode that we recorded, it was almost 2 years ago, which is pretty crazy to think about. But a lot of things have changed in the world, and a lot of new information has come out. Old information has resurfaced. There's a lot of confusion out there when it comes to talking about nutrition, and it's coming from all angles. I don't care if you're vegan, you're plant-based, you're paleo, you're just a regular fast food guy or girl. It doesn't matter where you're coming from, what your background is. There's so much going on right now. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, it's really been odd about how much has been focused on nutrition and how it's evolved over the past couple of years. I really got involved in this field. I don't want to say from a professional level, because I don't know if I see myself as. I guess I am professional because I do earn some income from what I do. So I guess that makes me professional by definition. But I do believe that there are a lot of people, a lot of experts in the field that are way above my pay grade. So when I got involved in this field back in, late 2011, 2012, that's when, everything seemed very new to me, with the exposure of social media and the availability of being able to listen to lots of different points of view around nutrition and wellness. Seeing that evolve over the last couple of years has been interesting. I think it's been good, and I think some of it's been bad as well. Some of the good is that we are seeing the plant-based movement, if we want to call it that, or get more momentum in the general realm of nutrition. I'm starting to see commercials on television that are beginning to market their product as plant-based.
Yeah.
I'm beginning to see labels in traditional grocery stores as, plant-based labels with like a cute little green leaf. So it's eye-catching. So that is one of the good things that I'm starting to see from the plant-based world. There are other things out there too that I think are very good when we start to see some of the larger institutions are starting to really migrate over to providing advice and guidance that's much more plant-centered.
Yeah, I think it's definitely evolved drastically. I know I was overseas for the summer, part of the summer, and I know that in a lot of restaurants, you're seeing better plant-based options, more plant-based options on the menus, and it'll say vegan, it'll say gluten-free,
right.
It'll have the vegan symbol in their window. We welcome people that eat vegan. Like, that has definitely evolved overseas, and I notice it when I came back here as well, that you're able to get a lot more plant-based options, and the chefs in the kitchens and the restaurants, they're all willing to accommodate. And I think that's a big difference that has come into society pretty recently. Those commercials that we see, they're all over. I'm even hearing them on the radio now. So it's really changed a lot. And there's a lot more information out there, I guess, in both ways.
And I think wherever you look in North America, in the States or Canada, and of course different regions are going to work a little bit differently, but you just see an influx of different products on the shelves, right? Like there's 3 or 4 different kinds of mayonnaise companies, and there's all different kinds of cheeses, and you could get gourmet cheese where, Miyoko's cheese, you wouldn't even know the difference between what you were eating. So those little companies are coming up, and like you said, Tom, the bigger companies are starting to draw attention to the fact that their products are vegan. And I think what that tells us is that they see the trends. they see where it's moving, and it's not necessarily that they just think that there's a lot of people out there who are becoming vegan now or are looking for it, but they actually see that going into the future because the science is so strong, because people are getting so much better, and they want to get in early. And then you also have so many milk commercials, and you see more and more of those commercials happening now, and it's a big eye roller for the vegan and plant-based community. But what I see is a company that's scared. I see that, these big companies are scared what's going to happen to my business. So we're starting to see more beef commercials. We're starting to see more milk commercials because they are seeing their numbers go down.
Yeah, you're right. And one of the good examples we have here in the States is the United States Department of Agriculture has what's called the My Plate, which used to be the food pyramid, but now it's the My Plate. So the USDA, as part of the whole My Plate program, has now vegetarian and vegan options as well as part of the My Plate. And they don't talk about meats as far as the protein portion of the My Plate. They talk about protein as My Plate. They don't talk about meats and dairy, but then they also talk about protein alternatives. They talk about the nuts and the seeds and the soy and the tempeh. And, I saw the word tempeh on the U.S. Department of Agriculture My Plate site today.
That's unbelievable.
And that is great. And you nailed it, Shoshana, because it's all about providing choices to people, because people are going to start to use they use their wallet to get food. And if these companies understand that, we need to keep up with these trends. So if we don't have this option for people to make this selection, then we're going to miss out on it. So that's really what it is. It's becoming, these companies are providing more options. And that's really where a lot of the confusion comes from, and where things have grown to is we have grown to that there are so many nutritional options out there that people are hearing, and that's being generated from all this noise that we're hearing about around nutrition, that these options present themselves. And a lot of times people are not good with options.
Yeah, they're not. But mentioning the food plate in Canada, the food guide is going to be changing shortly, and they're introducing more plant-based options as well. They're removing some of those food categories, or they're changing them up to recognize plant-based proteins and plant-based options, just like they are in the States in the My Plate. And I think it's really interesting how that food guide is going to make a change. And that's a huge change that's going to have a big impact all over Canada, because all the schools are now going to have to teach it that way. And that's something that a lot of people are not happy with. The meat and dairy farmers of Canada are really not happy. And the people putting together that food guide are not really listening to them, because I think they realize that people need the choices, and the healthier options need to be available to them so that they understand what they should be consuming. But that being said, who are they to tell us what to eat, right? Because we're all different, and we all should be maybe eating differently, shouldn't we? That's a confusing statement. There's a lot of confusion out there.
Yeah, and I think, you said it right too, when no one is going to force us to eat something that, and we're very, I think, misguided in a sense to where we think that people are going to be literally forcing food down our throats. Like, I hear certain people talk about Whole Foods and how, when you walk into Whole Foods, it's really not Whole Foods. It's just kind of all these fancy words covering up all of their ingredients for sugar and grains and all this other stuff. But it's not like you have a choice. You don't have to go to Whole Foods. I think the education around people needs to come to understanding that I have these options. If I choose this food to eat, what's it going to do to me? If I choose this food to eat, what's it going to do to me? And if I choose this, what's it going to do to me? I think that's really where the education that's ultimately going to help our societies get healthier, that's where it's going to happen. So we need to educate them that way.
And I think people need to take a moment, and they need to be more mindful about their bodies and what they're putting into it. Because you're absolutely right. Walking into Whole Foods, half of Whole Foods is just organic junk food, right? Or cane made with cane sugar instead of regular sugar, made with olive oil instead of canola oil, right? So half those foods aren't healthy anyway. But until people start to make slight changes, and they can actually feel a difference in their body, they could actually see a difference in their body, they could feel a difference in their mind, they're not going to know any better. Because the truth is, everybody knows that if you eat less junk food, if you eat less processed food, if you eat whole foods, whether it's completely plant-based or a whole food omnivore diet, you're going to be better off than you were, eating your fast food window diet. But until you start to make those changes and feel those feelings, there's going to be nothing driving you forward. And we have to take a leap of faith and we have to try it.
Right. And the key is knowing when to make those changes.
I don't know how we're going to educate people to make those choices based on how foods make them feel. I really don't, because I think of the average person and I feel like they just don't have time to test themselves. They're not a pilot, like they're not going to take the time to, today I'm going to eat this food and see how I react to that. And then I'll make a decision after that. Why can't someone just tell me what to eat? And that's what I think my plate and the food guides are basically designed to do. They're supposed to guide us in a certain direction and tell us what to eat. So the average person would see that and say, okay, they're telling me what to eat. I'm going to eat it.
I think a lot of people don't necessarily pay attention to it. They're people who are stuck in their routines. They're not turning on the internet and looking for what's the government telling me to do today. They're not necessarily watching these new documentaries coming out on Netflix. And
what they're doing is they're watching TV, they're seeing commercials for McDonald's, and they're going to McDonald's and eating.
Yes. So the people who I find in my coaching life who are coming to me are people who have gone the healthier route before, whether it was a very clean omni diet or a very clean plant-based diet or just a plant-based diet, and then they fell off the wagon. They've tried 100 million diets since then. Nothing has worked. And finally something clicks that if they don't make a difference today, they're not going to see their children graduate. They're not going to see their children walk down the aisle. If they don't make a difference today, they're going to end up in a walker and a wheelchair, and they're going to be spending $3,000 a month on their medications, and they are not willing to go back again. Something has clicked inside them, and they know that if they don't make a change today, then there's no changing it. And they need the accountability, they need the education, they need the mindset around it, and we need the behavior modification around it too. It's not just enough to say, this is what I have to eat, because we've been programmed to eat a certain way, and it's very difficult for many people to turn that off.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's really all about behavior modification, really be before anything else, because that is where, we find our comfort in food. And who, after a long day of work, wants to think about going home and spending what they think would be 70 minutes standing up at their counter, chopping, sauteing, baking, waiting, cleaning dishes? Who would want to do that? But through realization and small exercises and doing a little bit of research and finding mentors and people to help coach them through, like you all, that it's not that hard at all. And it's just about making key small changes, as our friend Sid Garza-Hillman would say, those small steps, right? Mm-hmm. In my coaching philosophy around with people, in all aspects of what I coach, we want progress, not perfection. Like we'll never get to perfect. And I think having that perfection is really what holds people back from progressing, is they don't see the instantaneous results. They don't see it. We don't see studies about why you shouldn't cross the road in 70-mile-an-hour traffic, right? Because you're most likely going to get hit and killed. We see studies around food, and we can argue about them all day long. And the reason we can argue about them is because you really don't see the results until way down the line, right? So until somebody is able to really see the small wins that they can make by taking those small steps and making small changes and modifying their behavior just a little bit, those larger habits will develop that will build to a longer, more sustainable diet.
And that's probably the biggest problem that society has right now, is that everybody needs that instant gratification and everybody's looking for the immediate result. And it doesn't work that way. Like, life doesn't work that way. Anything worth doing is going to take time, and it's going to take patience. It's going to take consistency. It's going to take practice. It's going to take all of those things to be able to get to the results that you want. And I think making small goals, making small steps like you just talked about, is a very important, crucial way to get to a new habit, to make that change and get the results that you really want, that are going to be long lasting and worth having.
I'm in the process of writing this piece right now. It's about an on-demand society. And that's really that's what we are. We turn into this on-demand society. We have YouTube and Netflix and Hulu and DVR. We can get anything and have it like right away. I mean, heck, Amazon can deliver something to your door in 2 hours.
What's Hulu?
It's an on-demand where you can watch network TV anytime you want. You don't have to wait until 8:30 p.m. to watch that show like I had to do when I was a kid.
Right.
You know, and I don't want to be that person that talks about, well, when I was a kid, this is the way we did it. But that's the way our society is changing, which is fine. Our society can change like that. But I don't think our behaviors and our habits and our minds as human beings are changing as quickly as society is changing. So we're in this gap right now to where we're trying to feed ourselves into this on-demand society when our minds haven't evolved to catch up with it yet. So as coaches and as advocates for healthy lifestyles like we are, it's important that we take that into account when we're helping people work through and, you know, depending upon where they are in that stage of change, if they're, you know, pre-contemplating change, then they really don't want to make change. But how is it that we can get to folks that way to kind of get their interest piqued? That's the important thing.
I use a magic 3. I kind of took it from when I used to teach kindergarten. Kids used to ask me to do things for them all the time, and I'd say, ask 3, then me. And I kind of like the idea of 3, and I started using it with a lot of my clients on a more adult level. And when they say to me, like, I haven't made progress, I haven't lost a pound, my head's not clearer. And I say, well, let's look at 3 things that have changed. Let's look at 3 things that you have done. Let's look at 3 habits that have changed. And we find 3 things. And it's really easy to find 3 things when you're asked to, when you dig a little bit deeper. And then it's like, oh, yeah, okay, instant gratification. I'm ready to move forward again. And then we work towards it. The other trend that I find coming up, surprisingly, is that a lot of people think their scales are changing. So when you're in a state where we don't think that we could ever get healthy. We are so, we are just in such a bad state where we're overweight. Our minds are messed up from everything that we've been eating. Our lifestyles are out of control, so that when something good does happen, like the scale tells you you've lost 5 pounds in a month or you've lost 10 pounds in 6 weeks, then people are like, oh, that can't be. My scale must be broken. There's no possible way that I could have done that. And we are so negative. So we're looking for all this instant gratification. And then when it comes, we don't even accept it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I see that. I see that as well. And there's nothing wrong with instant gratification. It's just a matter of the points that you steer yourself towards that give you gratification. So instant gratification is great. You just have to make sure the quality of that gratification is steering you in the right direction, because you will always, if you make those points of instant gratifications points on a timeline, all you have to do is just get to each one. And, if folks really just took a step back, and even if they broke their day down hour by hour, and, what I've experienced is people having a hard time getting through the day and not being hungry. Like, okay, that's legitimate. So that's a form of instant gratification. Like, how can we curb this hunger? That's like, well, then let's just get to the next hour. What is it that you can do in the next hour? Maybe it's some water. Maybe it's some tea. Maybe, you know what? Hey, let's try to go this hour without having to think about the food. Why don't you take 10 minutes and write down why it is you think you're hungry? Like, what's the feeling you're getting? It's kind of changing the way instant gratification feels to people is part of the key.
It's interesting how a lot of what we do these days have really become about the food, and everything is about food and who's eating this and who's eating what and why do you eat that way? Why should I eat this way? And it's all about the food. Society's all about the food, and it's kind of frustrating that that's what the focus is. And there's way more things in life than just the food. And it's tough to handle sometimes.
I know we get up on a stage, and when we're done, one of the biggest questions that we get asked is, what do you eat? Or what do you feed your kids? And okay, it might be interesting for you to know what I eat or what Adam eats, but what's right for you to eat? That's the question that you need to be asking. It's not necessarily the same for everybody. There are certain parameters that will help everybody as a society and globally to be healthier. But at the same time, we're different sizes. We have different energy levels. We train differently. We don't train differently. All of those things come together to tell us what we need to eat.
Right. And I think I shared this with you, Shoshana, when we talked a few weeks ago. And our mutual friend, Chris Haig, I was having an interaction with him a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about this very subject. And we were talking about how is it that, folks are projecting this one-size-fits-all approach to nutrition. And he came up with a really fantastic analogy about, That's like saying I wear a size 9 shoe, but you wear a size 11. But that's like me saying everybody should wear size 9 shoes because that's the best size for you.
Yeah.
Like, well, that I thought that was a great point, and that's a really great analogy to look at it because, and I mean, talk about one size doesn't fit all. I mean, we have these specific needs, and not everybody's in the same place. I look at nutrition and wellness as a spectrum, and we're all at different parts of the spectrum. And Adam, when you say everything is about food, you're right. Even our movies are about food. Like, I just want to go to the movies and watch Star Wars.
Yeah.
I don't want to turn on Netflix and see all these documentaries have their place, and I think that, they do have their place, and we can get into that. But you're right. Everything is about nutrition, and, we got to nail this in the bud and move on to something more fun.
And so I turn on Netflix to watch Star Wars, and What the Health comes up, right? And that's all the rage lately.
It's suggested to us
Right.
because we've watched like
because we've
30
watched
other
all the other documentaries. So What the Health comes up, and so we watched it. And, it's interesting. There's a lot of good information in there. There's a lot of interesting things that were brought up. And now in the media recently, there's a ton of negative media towards it. There's a lot of people arguing about the science behind what's going on.
defense
And
videos.
what I get from all this media and all the comments that I'm reading on social media is that people are now even more confused than they were before, right?
Right.
So is a documentary like that, is that a good thing for people? Is it a bad thing for people? Like, is it helping anybody if everyone's even more confused than they were before?
I was on the phone with a girl the other night, and she basically said to me, I was all in for this plant-based lifestyle. And then she didn't even say I watched What the Health. She did, but her comment was, I've been listening to what everybody else in the media has to say, and now I'm not so sure that this is where I should be. And
Right.
It wasn't about her. It wasn't about how she feels plant-based. It wasn't about anything that has changed in her life since becoming plant-based. It wasn't about the research that she's read. It was all about what the media has to say about it.
Yeah, what people are
Right.
talking about.
Right. And that's, there's noise in every realm of life. There's going to be noise. And we try to block out noise and clutter. And heck, there's a whole movement of minimalism devoted to blocking out the noise and the clutter. And maybe sometimes there needs to be some minimalism when it comes to these documentaries and around nutrition. But I could definitely understand your client's confusion, Shoshana. There's, even I found myself listening to somebody and being like, oh, he's kind of got a point. And then I kind of had to like virtually slap myself in the face and be like, okay, yes. Science doesn't lie. Science is fact, right? There's science is out there. You can twist science to make it sound like anything you want.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. The problem is that we're not taking our own individuality around what our own physiology needs and taking that science and applying it to us as we need it, rather than forcing us to fit our round science peg into the square science box. That just it's not working that way.
The thing that I find most frustrating is, and I haven't looked for a lot because I really don't want to be bothered by it. I have a whole other life to live. But what I have watched that has been negative towards What the Health, every single article I've read or every single video I've watched has reminded me of a Saturday Night Live skit. So none of it has been done that I've seen, and I'm sure that there are, but none of it has been done in a legitimate manner. None of it has been done. Everything is sarcastic. Everything is a joke. Everything is condescending, kind of like a conversation like we had a couple of months ago, where there was another podcast host who would just like slammed one of the plant-based doctors and was just so immature about it and didn't approach it in a mature manner. And that's what's upsetting to me. It's that I haven't found anything worthwhile to read or worthwhile to watch to make me question and ask questions. Because if those questions come up, I'm going to ask them. I'm going to look at it. when we look at our family, Adam's heart disease gone, his tumor shrunk, my son's eczema gone. I know that when I eat well, my PTSD is good, right? I could deal with it. And when we don't eat this way, it was what life was before. So I could see what's happened in my family and with my clients, but give me something legitimate. Give me something that trusts you. And I think people just see it as entertainment at this point.
It is entertainment, and it goes back to the whole instant gratification thing. So you have to, there is a certain charisma and a certain attraction that a lot of those other podcasters and quote entertainment doctors and those folks that are driving against what the health and are, basically are anti-plant-based for whatever reason. I don't even know why. It's not like there's some sort of club that people have to sign up to adhere to a nutrition. It's not like if I recruit 12 people over to the plant-based diet today, I'm going to get an extra $1,000 in my paycheck. That
kale, you're going to get an extra pound of kale.
Exactly. That just doesn't work. Although that might be a really good idea. I don't know. But anyway, so there's really no, and I keep hearing about how, they're everybody's trying to sell, the plant-based diet, or there's, they have hidden agendas. I'm like, what could be the hidden agenda? What is it?
Make people healthier, save the world.
Well, that's the problem.
By making not die?
Yeah, but by making people healthy, that's going to put a lot of other people out of business, right? And that's a problem for a lot of industry.
But what is it? But the paleo folks and the no sugars, no grains folks and the I don't know what other diets or fruitarian folks, I mean, they're all saying the same thing. They're saying that, yes, if you eat sugars and grains, you're going to get diabetes. Mm-hmm. Other people are saying is like, no, if you eat saturated fat, you're going to get diabetes. Let's look at the coconut oil. Remember the whole coconut oil study that came out again just about a month ago? Yep. It was my phone was ringing off the hook. I had neighbors knocking on my door. Tom, I thought you said coconut oil was good for me. Mm-hmm. My response was, yes, it's good for you because we went over your blood tests. You did some genetic testing, so we know that that's good for you. You're running 50-mile races, so yes, you could deal with it. It's not good for the other person down the street who is overweight, who does have hardening of the arteries. So maybe coconut oil is not right for him yet. Mm-hmm. So when we see things like that tell us that coconut oil is bad, yes and no.
Right, but it doesn't tell you yes and no. So people that are watching these documentaries don't get the individualism out of it. So for somebody that's going to watch something like that or read the media, how are they supposed to navigate through all that information? How do they watch these documentaries? How do they use the information that the documentaries are actually giving us to best benefit them? Do they just watch it as entertainment and just let it go in one ear and out the other? Or do they actually dig a little deeper? How are people to navigate this?
Well, I think, unfortunately, now I think the conversation about what the health has grown so large and it's so diverse for and against the movie that, yeah, people are watching it to find out what the hubbub is all about. Like, what's the reaction? Yeah. When I sat down to watch the movie, I actually sat down and watched it with my 12-year-old son. And I kind of thought in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, am I going to be ready to answer his questions? And the first thing he said to me in the middle of the movie, as he watched all this, was like, oh my God, if I eat meat, then I'm going to die. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about that. Like, why do you think that way? So I kind of talked him through it about how he pointed to some of the studies, and I had him go to the website and he looked at some of the studies. I said, okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about what it is that you do most of the time. What is it that what does your lifestyle look like? Then let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit about how is it that you want to live your life going forward. So I kind of gave him a little bit of education around, how different advocates use science to really get their point across in a meaningful way. We talked a little bit about the meaning of propaganda. I don't really think What the Health was propaganda, so to speak. It had a little propagandistic tone to it to some extent. But I told him he got a chance to learn what that is. And then I also talked to him about how to look at nutrition to see something like that. And it was really all about thinking about his day. Like, what is at your day? Your day is you're not in line at Taco Bell every day. You're not going to Burger King for lunch. And you're not going to McDonald's for dinner. So I think we're going to be okay for a while. But what we can do is take the information that we just watched in this movie and in other movies and say, how is it that I can take what was communicated to me and use that to go back to making those small changes in my life? So let's look at when I get up in the morning. Should I get up in the morning and have a swig of Diet Coke? Or should I get up and maybe make some hot water with lemon? Let me just do that first. And then maybe the next week it's let's substitute our breakfast. Let me substitute the bacon and eggs for something different. So let me soak some oatmeal overnight and chop some pears and put some cinnamon in it and try that. And then next week, let's do lunch. Then let's do dinner the week after that. And then just kind of move down in small ways like that. So that's really where it's good to take information like that, pull it in, find out how is it that I can apply to myself, and then move from there.
Yeah, that's the key. Having people realize that they need to take what they see in these movies and these documentaries and find the pieces that could help them improve their current quality of life. And to be able to sit down with your son and do that at the age of 12 is fantastic. Congratulations to you. I think that's a great way to educate your son. And for anyone listening, if you could sit down and educate loved ones by doing what Tom just did, that's a huge benefit and the step in the right direction. And I think that us as educators, I know me as a teacher, when I go to my school this year, if I decide to show my students this film, the What the Health, it's not going to be I'm going to put the DVD into the player, let them watch it and call it a day. It's going to be something that's going to spark a conversation, and I'm going to be looking to help each of those students individually pull something out of the documentary that's going to benefit them specifically. And I think if people start doing things like that, then that's going to be what makes the difference long term for most people.
Right. And in What the Health, they portrayed, I think it was 2 or 3 individuals that had severe health issues. I mean, they were really in bad shape, and they followed them throughout the movie. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a great story, and I thought the outcome was good, and I was happy about that. But one of the things that I thought was interesting about it was that, yes, we have a lot of sick people in the world, but that's not really the group of people that need to hear the message. Who needs to hear the message is kind of that middle of the pack people, the people that are kind of on the fence and that have fallen over on either side. We need to kind of get them back up thinking about what it is that they need to do differently. What the Health very much followed the traditional, 6 stages of making a movie, to where you had a plot that had, a conflict, it had an antagonist and a protagonist, and then it had a climax, and then it had an end, and then it had, a what's next to it. So it was very much entertaining. Mm-hmm. So I think that, being able to, look at what those individuals were going through, I think was great to see what a plant-based diet can do. But I also think that easing the message and saying like, okay, we know that you may not be this sick, but here's how it can help you not get that way. Like, here's how it can help you day to day. Here's how it can make you feel. Here's how it can reduce some of the normal symptoms that we wouldn't think are very major.
And I think a movie like What the Health is going to get people to start to think that way. So whether they think that it's totally extremist or they think it's totally bizarre, something's going to click eventually to make them think, you know what, maybe I do need to make a change in this direction, whether it's 100%, 90%, 80%. No one's denying that a diet filled with fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, grains is bad for you. Right? Mm-hmm. The more you have of that in your diet, the better. There are situations where grains might not be good for you. If you start taking what you like about every diet, so, you start eating a ton of grains, you start eating a ton of bacon, and you start, drinking a ton of fresh juice all the time, like, that's not going to be good for you in the long run, right? Or even the short run. But it's going to spark an idea inside everyone's head of whether they agree with this movie or not, whether they agree with the science or not, what could they start doing that's better? Because anything for most of us is better than where we are today. I mean, there's no perfection, right? Like we talked about before. It's just about becoming a little bit better each day and making little changes every single day.
Right. And sometimes it's okay to have that controversy. So I think you're right, Shoshana, about having that kind of like that shock and awe, like here's what it is. What the Health maybe kind of needed to be that virtual slap in the face that we needed to get people talking about the issues, because if you don't talk about the issues, it's not going to get resolved. And yes, there will always be people that are way on the fringe and kind of obnoxious about their viewpoint either way. It's just, we have to count on those core group of people that are reasonable thinkers and that have open minds and that are willing to make those small changes to get themselves to where they need to be for themselves.
There's a quote, and I can't remember what it is, but it's something like, if you don't have haters, you're nobody. You know what I mean? Like, right. if nobody's speaking up against what you're doing, then what you're doing is not worth it.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very,
so,
very true.
I mean, I guess there's some merit in
I
that.
guess these kind of documentaries have to have us following these people with these diseases and the sicknesses to see the transformation. And it would be awesome for us to have some kind of resource that is targeted at the average person who doesn't have these diseases, like you were mentioning, that will convince people the importance of transformation or change in their lives prior to those tragedies happening, prior to you getting those diseases, getting across the message of let's find a healthier route for you so that you can prevent yourself from being in the position of these people. But that would make a pretty boring movie.
Well, if you think about it, Adam, that's kind of like that's kind of the reality these days, because if you look at advocates like yourself, and there are other bloggers and podcasters and coaches out there that are really doing great work. And it's at this level that we're at is where the work is going to get done. Mm-hmm. Right there, we're not big celebrities. We're not on big network shows going through seasons of taking hundreds of pounds off of people. Yeah. We're just working with people day in and day out. It's a very grassroots-esque work that we're doing. And people, when I tell people that I'm in podcasting and podcasting production, and I help a lot of people with using YouTube and other alternative media. And I work with people to kind of help get themselves exposure to the right groups of people in the right demographic. And when I tell some people I do that, and they're like, well, everybody has a podcast or everybody has a YouTube channel. And I said, but that's the benefit. That's what's great about it, because there's so many great things to share. There's so much information out there. It's so much so to the point to where 5 years ago, when I was going through my kind of renaissance around nutrition, and when I first got hooked up with the No Sugar, No Grains crew, everybody thought I was crazy. People would look at me like I would be eating my food before my race, very specific, and everybody think I'm crazy. It's those same people that are now, watching different YouTube channels and they're listening to different podcasts. Like 2 years ago, they weren't doing that. And some of them are, I got this one neighbor who's, really into ketosis, really low carb, really high fat. I got this other neighbor who has gone completely plant-based and vegan. So whatever you decide to do, as long as you're doing something that you feel like you're pushing yourself into a greater awareness of your own health, that's great, because that's the first step.
Yeah, getting in touch with yourself and realizing what could help you or finding a path along that direction is really going to make a difference. And that's probably the biggest benefit to getting the one-on-one coaching and working with people like you, Tom, working with people like us, helping educate and guide the people that want to learn into those lifestyle changes. I think that's a huge benefit.
Right. And I think we can all agree that a plant-based diet is the best overall foundation for nutrition that's out there, bar none, hands down. People can argue about the motivations and about how, ketosis works, how low carb and high fat works, things like that. But the one thing that all of those successful people in those diets have in common is the motivation for it, is the motivation to always find something that works better. So those folks that are working in a ketotic diet and are working in low carb and high fat, I keep picking on those two because they're just so obviously that's a lot of the noise we hear. Yeah. That might work well for some people. There is zero arguments against a plant-based diet that I could find out there. I mean, I think people will eventually come back to really what it's all about. And I want people to try different things that work. And I encourage folks that I work with to try certain things. I mean, if you want to try putting yourself in ketosis, go for it. You can try it. Talk to your doctor. Make sure that he or she is good with it for you, and then go for it and stay in touch with them, and then let me know how it goes. They will all come back.
If we take it even more basic, the other common denominator is the lack of processed foods or minimally processed foods or occasionally processed foods. It's not a diet filled with hamburgers, hot dogs, whether they're store-bought food. We need to be buying the ingredients in the stores and making the food on our own, or finding local restaurants or local caterers who will make it from scratch for us. This is the key also. The more processed food you have in the diet, the more chance you have at being overweight, the more chance you have at being sick. And if you need to start somewhere, because, we could say, what the now, right? If we need to start somewhere, we just need to start with that and then take our small steps like we've been talking about throughout the show and start moving in that direction. Get accountability, get some coaching, get some help if you need it, behavior modification, what have you, but start looking in the right direction. No matter which camp you want to go with, it's the same beginnings.
Right. And we want to encourage people to not, don't try to live someone else's diet. It's not worth it, because it's actually, I think, working backwards. It's actually regressing. You said it earlier, Shoshana, about people come up to you and ask you what you eat. I get the same question. I don't get it as often as I used to, which is great. I used to get it a lot. So much so that I had somebody who was doing a podcast who would always ask his guests, well, what'd they have to eat today? I'm like, really? We're still on that? But I hate hearing people, well, what'd you eat today? What worked? And that doesn't work. So we need to find out what it is we need and make those changes that support what it is you need. Don't pay attention to anybody else. Just focus on yourself.
Tom, I think that's a really great time to kind of leave people thinking, let them decide what their next steps are going to be, what their next choices are going to be. And we really wanted to thank you so much for everything that you're doing, with the coaching that you're doing in your community, with what you're doing on a larger scale as well, for communicating with us and having some great ideas and keeping in touch with us and listening to the podcast. We really appreciate that a lot. And we wanted to say thank you so much for your time today.
Tom, if people wanted to reach out and connect with you, what would be the best place for them to do that?
The best place would probably just through Facebook, through either direct message or a friend request on Facebook. That's usually the best. I'm not very proactively active on Facebook. I don't put a ton out there, but I do, kind of watch, and it's really probably my main source of connecting with people. I don't do any active marketing on Facebook, so you probably won't see that from me. So again, a Facebook friend request or a direct message. Also, an email at tom@tyogawellness.com is also a good place to get in touch with me. And I would love, I'm starting to put together, I do these small group sessions each spring and fall. It's about 6 people. I'm going to do 4 of them. And we basically start around the first or second week of September. I haven't nailed down the date yet. And we go in through December, and we all just get together once a week for about 90 minutes and talk over a Zoom network. We kind of talk and, talk about our, our struggles, our successes. It's almost like a peer coaching with a little bit of, leadership from each one of us. And talk about some of the best practices and things like that. So I'm in the process of putting those together, and we're going to start sometime in September. So if folks want to get in touch, this is a great time to do it. Tyogawellness.com is there. It's fairly current. I'm a little my webmaster has been on about a 1-year vacation. So when they get back, we actually have a new design site that's ready to go. I just need to make some changes.
Awesome.
So there as well.
Cool. So we'll link to that in the show notes. And thank you again, Tom, for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I appreciate everything you do as well.
Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Plant Trainers Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any other podcast listening platforms. We appreciate the feedback we receive from you. Every time we get a 5-star rating or review on iTunes from one of our fans, it ensures other people will find us too. Thanks to our patrons. To become a patron, visit www.patreon.com/planttrainers. Even supporting us with $1 really makes a difference. Connect and follow us on Instagram and Twitter @PlantTrainers. Like Plant Trainers on Facebook, join our newsletter, and check out our website at www.planttrainers.com for awesome plant-based recipes and the list of our services. Email your questions to info@planttrainers.com so we can answer them on our upcoming Facebook Lives. We hope we've inspired you today. Join us again next time, and have a healthy day.